Good day, everyone. Welcome to Rethink Retail's 2025 TREBS webinar, where we explore key forces shaping the retail landscape, highlighting emerging innovations, transformative strategies, and data-driven approaches that are redefining success in the industry. In an era where retailers must deliver personalized customer experience at scale, streamline creative workflows, and make data-backed decisions faster than ever, staying ahead requires the right tools and insights. This webinar dives into advanced automation, AI-powered solutions, and data-backed creative decisions can help retailers optimize campaigns, reduce operational friction, and enhance customer engagement. So join us for this dynamic discussion that delivers practical strategies and actionable takeaways to help you navigate 2025 with confidence and agility. So I'm really pleased to be joined by three experts who are each leading in their own field, in their own companies, this very important topic around how we're sort of driving personalization. And I'm going to quickly ask our three guests to introduce each other, their role, and sort of very rapidly what brought them to being experts in their field. So let's kick things off. And here I'll go in alphabetical order with Ethan.
Thank you so much, Carl. It's great to be here. My name is Ethan Chernosky. I lead marketing for Placer. Placer is a location analytics company. What that means is people vote with their feet. We show you how they vote across the United States every single day.
Beautiful. And Kartik.
Hey, Carl, thanks for having me. This is Karthik. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Rappi. Super excited to talk with you. I've been at companies like Expedia and DoorDash before, and the world is constantly evolving. So super excited to share my stories with you all.
Amazing. And Satesh?
Hey everyone, thanks for having me here. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Rocketium. We are a design and analytics software company for large brands and agencies.
Amazing. All right, so let's get right into it. So 2025 is already well on its way. It seems like every week new technologies seem to kind of blindside us and inspire us at the same time. A lot of them have to do with personalization. Every one of them pretty much has to do with AI. So I want to just sort of start in sort of the reverse order here and get your kind of high level observations about what are the top trends, challenges, opportunities we're already seeing without getting super specific around the personalization topic. But, we're seeing retailers are having to continually work to optimize their resources. We know that they're looking at, technology, but they're also looking at even processes and ways that they need to think about their business. So any sort of key sort of highlights already catching your attention and the way that retailers need to consider and adopt technologies in this rapidly evolving era of AI and personalization and even broader just technology in general. So starting with you, Satesh.
Yeah, so there are some more tactical things that I'm sure we'll cover later in the conversation, but I wanted to talk about one area that I believe is a sleeping giant. It's an area that we see very closely, which is that of retail media. It's not a tech or any sort of process thing, but a very important area, which is obviously very high margin, high volume for retailers, so it makes sense for them. But for brands, it's an untapped source of customer awareness, acquisition, and so on. Amazon, Walmart, they are the big ones over there, 75%, 5% ownership, but many more platforms will come into this. So a lot more excitement in this space, 2025 and beyond. This is going to be very, very exciting for retailers and agencies.
100%. I teach digital marketing at the master's program here in McGill, and that topic of retail media and retail media networks is taking up more and more of our class time because we noticed that there's a huge opportunity there, and I definitely want to get a little more tactical about that and later in the discussion. Moving on to you, Kartik.
So I think there are going to be two key themes for like this year. I think one is like instant gratification and the other one's like offline to online. So on instant gratification, I think we've been seeing this journey going on for like several years, but I think this is a pivotal year. So for example, like Amazon next day delivery to like Amazon same day delivery to same hour or like within minutes. And I think that's going to change the landscape significantly like in 2025. This I think will get accelerated a lot more with all the companies returning back to work, right? So I think there's going to be less time for people to basically go and shop on their own. I think the second part of it is like offline to online. So we've been talking about that penetration change for like a long period of time. I think 2025 is when you're going to see that happen a lot more. I think given like how easy it is to order on like online apps and like have others do the shopping experience for you, I think you're going to see that journey accelerate significantly in 2025.
100%. And in terms of instant gratification, I have a good Rappi story where I had a 7-minute delivery experience, the fastest I've ever had, being in Bogota with a food supplier who wanted me to try their product. And I thought it was going to be like, I don't really have times. Like, do you have 10 minutes? And it would actually took less than 10. So talk about instant gratification from Rappi. I live that at the forefront. And it's an interesting topic. A couple of weeks ago, our big article came out from Wall Street Journal where people are showing apparently disappointment in store because they're used to having almost endless aisle at their fingertips, and now retailers are having to deal with that sort of dichotomy of, well, on my couch I can see all these products, but when I'm in your store I'm only seeing probably maybe less than 10% of them. So how we connect those two realities will be really, really interesting. Ethan.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll follow off on this same theme, and I think it's the point of friction or conflict that retailers need to grapple with between the pursuit of experience and the pursuit of convenience, right? So on the one hand, consumers are demanding things faster. They want it to be easy. They want it to be available. But in a lot of cases, they actually want the complete opposite too. They want to go in and they want to have this more kind of white glove experience, and they want to be taken care of in store, and they want to experience the product and touch and feel and engage with the brand. And we're basically asking retailers to be able to do two things that are not perfectly simultaneous in terms of their path, or parallel in terms of their path. And I think that point of friction is incredibly exciting for how retailers will grapple with it, what they'll prioritize. And I think that prioritization piece is really key, because you're going to see a lot of retailers lean on that convenience element of like, this is what we're amazing at. This is our reason for being. We're going to over deliver here. At the same time, we're going to see other retailers who are going to say, no, we're amazing at experience, and you might have to wait a little bit longer, but it's worth it because of what we're providing. And those will sit everywhere across that spectrum.
The spectrum is indeed wide, and we have this interesting A/B test that we've been doing for years at the Retail Innovation Lab, where we've had the opportunity to give our students and clients in a C-store environment the opportunity to have sort of that frictionless grab and go experience versus the one that's a little more curated and more social, and interestingly enough, even with the youngest generation, the high touch sort of broader engagement still tends to work. Sometimes it's caused also because the technology isn't always as frictionless as we'd like it to be. But speaking about that, and maybe just building on that, Ethan, and we'll go back in sort of reverse order. We have to think about the challenges here. We're all, I think, technologists. I think we're all fans of how technology can improve the customer experience. But what are the real challenges that you've seen in adopting a sort of frictionless or this dichotomy that you're talking about, the high touch versus the high convenience? Like, what are the main challenges to overcome?
So there's two challenges here. One challenge is the technology provider challenge that is in every sector for every startup across every space, which is, do you have a solution to a problem, or do you have a technology? So in a lot of cases, we have a technology, but it's not really solving a big need for the consumer. And as a result, it's not delivering something important, significant, that's going to improve their experience in a substantial way. And therefore build something powerful and exciting that has longevity. But I think the other piece of that is we still struggle to understand the consumer. And, there's a lot of reasons why, because, there's a lot of different data sources. You have the benefits and of first party data, and the benefits of third party data, and loyalty programs, and panel data, and all these amazing resources. But the consumer is still really complicated, and even more so now because they've changed so much in the last 5 years. They live in different places. They work in different ways. They shop in different ways as a result. And some of the changes that we've seen are real and lasting, and they have a different, we operate in a different retail status quo than we did in 2019. And as a result, we're only now beginning to come to terms with the fact that this is what our consumer looks like, and we need to change and shift in order to address what they really need and to provide them the ideal mix of experience and convenience.
Amazing. Yeah. And so, we've had a lot of fragmentation in the data. We're trying to kind of get this unified view of the customer, understand where she is and how she wants to shop at that moment. Even though she could be the same person, she could have very different sort of inspirations and reasons for doing that, taking those actions at that particular time. So definitely a big challenge on top of the technological integration one. Kartik, what do you see as sort of the challenges? And you have an interesting landscape, and you're working also in markets that have different geographies. So how do you see it all kind of coming together? What's the main challenge that you're seeing around sort of getting that, hopefully that unified customer satisfaction happening?
Well, I think beyond like the challenges that everybody has in terms of like data and putting things and having one view of the customer, I think 2025 for me is a lot more like 2020, like when COVID happened and there was a step change in a lot of things. Like I'll give you two examples. I think the one example is like I think retailers are going to have a lot of margin pressure, right? I mean, because of labor cost, FX cost, and things like that. And it could be basic things like, you have like a global campaign, your transaction is different currencies in different countries, but like, your cost is in US dollars, your agencies are in US dollars. Like, how do you kind of maintain margin on that and still give promotions to customers? So that's going to be a very big challenge in like 2025. The second one, to be honest, is going to be a bit more on how can we kind of still meet customer expectations, like in a time where things are going to get more and more expensive, right? There's going to be a lot of promotions. Like, how do you make sure your promotion stack works properly? How do you give promotions only when it's needed? And like when it's incremental to the business versus like, diluting your margin cost. I think that's important. One last thing I'll just add is like I think customer behavior is also shifting at a rapid scale given the current like political like environment. For example, if I'm a retailer in Canada, I think buying local is something that's taken over in the last 3 to 4 weeks. You're not going to see that in any data, but how do you stay on top of the consumer trends and pivot quickly to make sure you're marketing correctly to the customers?
Amazing. Yeah, we'll talk more about personalization in a bit too, to go even a little deeper into that topic. But there is a lot to be in the whole promotional side. You're right. I spent quite a bit of time in Southeast Asia, and it's all that's the big question right now. How can we get off of this? This high of, or this sugar high of always this promotion, which yes has created amazing penetration for some of the platforms there, but now they can't get off of it. They can't find a way to get back to healthier margins, more sustainable margins. So maybe something we can talk about too when we get to more into personalization and how we can find that balance. Satej, what are the challenges you're seeing, and how are you addressing them?
Yeah, I want to echo what Karthik said, which is cost is something that is top of mind for everyone that we speak with. Even though they have all of this excitement about all the new things that they can do and growth and tech and all of those things, a lot of this comes down to cost and maybe some of experience of Ethan as well, which is they want to adopt tech, they want a solution, but they want to figure out the ROI of that. So cost is top of mind. A lot of teams come to us saying that we have a smaller team now than we did a year ago, and the demands on that team are a lot higher. So that's where they want to bring in automation. They want to use data in a smarter way. Obviously, with AI coming in, there is a lot of top-down pressure. For good or for bad, people think AI can do everything. So now that you have AI, why can't you do it a lot better, a lot cheaper? So that is certainly something we are seeing. Agencies that we speak with, they have similar pressures, but on top of that, they are also seeing brands wanting to create in-house agencies to run campaigns, to make creative. They are thinking maybe it's better we do things ourselves. So that is an added pressure for agencies as well. So a lot of opportunities, but cost remains top of mind for most people we speak with.
It's interesting to frame it in the context. I think we're all, it's still fresh in our memory how businesses adapted to the pandemic in 2020. And you brought up the example, we feel like we're entering like, maybe because of all this rapid deployment of AI and all the other sort of externalities of geopolitics and climate change and cyber and everything else sort of coming at the same time. It feels like we definitely have our fair share of challenges, going from what I coined the great acceleration to now the blind spots. They seem to be catching us off guard more and more frequently.
Carl, can I add something to that? I
Sure.
think the challenges are obviously there, but I think it steps up like in terms of like the opportunities and like anyone who can grasp those opportunities are like successful. Like so, for example, just going back to 2020 when COVID happened, what was happening is like tech companies didn't have food anymore. Everybody was working from home. It seems like a long time ago right now, right? But like. No one was doing ride share anymore and things like that. But food delivery was proliferating at that point of time. So at that point of time, like, DoorDash had an amazing opportunity for us to grow significantly compared to Uber, which was struggling with like rideshare at that point of time. So the opportunities are there. It's just certain pockets and you need to find your core strength and then accelerate at that point of time. I think fear sometimes like makes us like a little bit scared to pursue anything, but you got to find the pockets of opportunity and accelerate on that.
It's a super important point that you just made, because I do think these periods of change, they do create challenges, but they also create those opportunities for growth. I think one of the key things that we learned from maybe the pandemic and that immediate aftermath was the challenge of understanding the pendulum swings, right? So, I mean, let's take fitness as an example. Pandemic hits, everybody is obsessed with Peloton. No one's ever going to go to the gym again. The gym is stupid. Why would you ever want to be near people? It's only Peloton and whatever other products were out there. Fast forward 6 months later, Peloton's growth was over exaggerated. Maybe they overplayed it a bit, and everyone's back in the gym in ways they've never been before. And oh my gosh, that's actually carrying for years onward. And so I think what's really important is the way in which we grasp opportunity. And so you don't want to be overly conservative. Like, you want to make sure you take advantage of what's in front of you. But to go kind of blindly forward and, I don't know, change the name of your company to something that reminds us of the metaverse, even though the metaverse isn't going to take over yet. Like, maybe not the smartest idea. So that I think it always comes back to, what's my reason for being as a company? What am I actually providing? And what is my understanding of the customer, not just from what kind of tingles. So I'm excited about what it means for me, which is going to, I'm going to be biased to see the huge opportunity, but also what's going to be that check for me. How am I going to be able to be a little bit more conservative to see how is this likely going to unfold over years, not just the next 6 months, so that I don't necessarily consistently overplay my hand and then need to backtrack. And so I think that balance is something that a lot of businesses are much more focused on. And I think it's a much healthier approach to exactly what Kartik was mentioning, which is every challenging situation creates a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, just to add to that, like, I mean, like, again, during the pandemic, right? International travel like went dead. People were not traveling like across countries, and like, it meant the death of the travel industry. But what started picking up was domestic travel. Like, where can I drive to? Yeah, we started creating like pods of people who would stay together. Things like, Airbnb took over a lot more, right? Because it's like group of families like staying together with regional domestic travel, right? So it's not like travel went dead. It's just like pivoted, customer demands pivoted, and how do you kind of stay on top of it and like push into that opportunity? So like one example would be like, given the situation with the US, with a lot of countries, right? Avocado is like a key import to the US across multiple retailers. If something happens to avocado suppliers, what is like a substitute for that? Like, is there an opportunity for another company to kind of get into that space right now?
Interesting. Really, I mean, it's fascinating just how we've reframed just in the last 5 years, how we look at this and the shock and awe. So Satesh, we just talked about these sort of reframings. Now I want to kind of bring it to personalization more, something I know that you work really closely and talk about sort of, what are the key trends? Because right now we've been talking about personalization for a long time. The word that we haven't tied to it till recently is scale. And I'd like to sort of combine those two worlds and get back sort of in this in the upswing opportunity as Ethan and Kartik were just talking about, the opportunities that we're seeing that the technology is providing, albeit with some maybe more realistic expectations, because the pandemic did teach us that we can't just go off and fire in all different directions. We need to be a little more disciplined about how we incorporate some of these opportunities. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are around sort of personalization at scale and how you see this playing out in 2025.
Yeah, so we work with large brands and agencies who support them the great thing is that they have, over the years, they've been sold the message of personalization, and finally they've been able to get their CDPs and attribution stack, all of those things in place. So now what you have is a collection of very interesting segments and ways of grouping together users. And the only remaining thing now, so for example, unique things I heard the other day from one of our customers was people who shop while driving back from work, right, in a commute or during traffic lights or whatever, right? And so there's a very different way you might want to communicate with them. For a while, the bottleneck in this was having to go to an agency or in-house team and making all of this content. It's just the same base construct of the creative content, but then versions where you're swapping out one thing or the other. And that's where we are seeing technology unlocking that, which is how can you make all of those different versions without having to do copy paste work. So that has been a key unlock. So we have seen our customers making content in for different audience segments, also testing out different versions for that. And more importantly, being able to track that through the life cycle and see in each platform how this stuff is performing. So being able to see that for each audience, when I tried a certain kind of a layout or certain kind of color schemes or whatever, how that is performing. So personalization is not just an ideal that you strive for, but you're actually able to put some of that into practice. But there's still lots more to do because there's never an end to this. You never know what the bullseye is. You just have to throw a few more darts than you can. Tech can just keep accelerating that process every year.
Yeah, I think we could do a whole show just on attribution modeling and trying to see how are we really getting any closer to that? And is MMM really going to be the holy grail that we hope it to be to get that attribution better figured out? Kartik, here we go, stuck in traffic trying to figure out the shopper. This is probably something that sounds pretty close to one of your use cases. I could see myself in traffic in Bogota getting that 7-minute frozen treat delivered to me. So how contextual, what's the role of sort of the quality and the context of the data that you're seeing in 2025, and we're still reeling from whatever the situation is around cookies and privacy, and are they going? So can you just sort of frame that a bit, and how you're seeing that play out at Rappi?
Yeah, no, I think just before that, just like 10 seconds on Rappi. So Rappi basically is a marketplace with like multiple transactions. You have food transactions like similar to like a DoorDash. You have like, grocery transactions similar to like Instacart. And then you have like the 10-minute transaction that Carl spoke about earlier, which is basically through like a retailer that we have, which is called like Turbo, right? So for us, personalization takes like two parts. Like one is at the customer level and the other one's at a segment level. At the customer level, it's about instant gratification. So when you kind of come into the app, what's the next best action for you? Which restaurants do you like? Are you more like, McDonald's, KFC, fast food restaurants? Or are you more like the high-end restaurant that Ethan's like spoke about like earlier? Like, what do you like from a personalization perspective? The other part of it is a segmentation journey. On the segmentation journey, I think the way we think about it is one is frequency. So how can we get you from ordering McDonald's every week consistently and increasing that over time? How can we get you from McDonald's to like KFC and other like restaurants, the high-end one? But for us, where we also look at it at a segment level is what's the behavior that will get you more active like on the platform. So for example, if you get you from a food delivery customer to like a grocery customer, then you get the shopping carts and stuff in, then it's like more of a tighter behavior we build. If we kind of get you on the Turbo 10-minute product, what we see is like an instant lift in order rate in terms of retention and frequency. The way we think about it is like from a customer journey, from a personalized perspective, is the way I spend my spending habit is like I do food delivery like once or twice a week over the weekends. I do grocery probably once a week on Saturday or Sunday. Then I do top ups multiple time a week. Like I'm forgot eggs or forgot bread or forgot beer. So that's kind of how we think about it, and how do you kind of get to the user and owning part of their wallet as they make the decision. So I think it's the individual level and the segment level is how we think about it. And then I think external data is important in terms of ROI and stuff, but this is like internal data that each company has, right? And how do you kind of use that to determine the next best action for that particular customer?
Yeah, amazing. And then the context is rich there, where you have the opportunity to sort of engage the customer in those different moments of truth. As you know, is it an impulse? Is it a planned? That's really really interesting. And the whole notion of path to purchase right now and personalization. I was just saying last week to a group, we used to do these big charts where we were trying to do a path to purchase. You remember the customer journey mapping, and they ended up being spaghettis in a lot of ways, where we just had trouble really pulling any insight out of that. And Ethan, on to you. I mean, I remember working with retailers for many years where we just got excited about traffic counters at the door because we could finally sort of start measuring conversion half properly, because then there was the whole debate is, are we counting the delivery guy or not? And that was like a big thing. And we're like, anyways, we've come a long way, thankfully, from there. And we talk about this path to purchase and getting a little more granular about better understanding, not just how many door counts we have, but what are those dark counts, where they're coming from, how they're influencing our go-to-market strategy. So how do you see that personalization from a data set that starts well before they even walk to the door?
Yeah, I mean, we don't think about personalization. And I think one of the things that's been really interesting is, I mean, every data perspective that you're going to find brings a tremendous amount of value, but it's also limited. And so I think one of the biggest, maybe the worst kept secret about personalization is that there are limitations in what personalization can provide, the same way there are limitations in what third-party wider data sets can provide. And so I think it really falls on retailers, agencies, whoever it may be that's involved in this process, to understand what each piece of the puzzle means, and that each piece of the puzzle has very, very significant value in terms of really getting a good picture of who the customer is. How do we reach them? What are they doing, not just when they're in our world and our environment, which is generally what personalization is great at showing us, but where else are they? Who else should be part of that world of ours? What are they doing when they're not within our four walls or not on our platform? And so I think it's this combination. We have this wealth of data now available. And I think the big challenge that we're facing in this period of time is, how do we use it all together? So, one of our favorite topics is, I am among the Steve Dennis acolytes who used, harmonized retail or whatever kind of terminology you prefer. I don't like omni, but whatever we're saying about omni or harmonized retail, the reality is exactly, we want to follow all of these things, utilizing different elements together to create the better kind of output that comes from that mix of them. And so I think we're seeing retailers, brands, agencies, just companies across different spectrums start to get a lot more sophisticated in how they use these elements. And I think it's going to make their personalization efforts better. It's going to make the way they leverage third-party data sets better. It's going to make the whole utilization of data more broadly far more effective.
Listen, I always like a shout out to Steve. That's always a good way to engage and sort of translate any topic into something that feels meaningful. I want to sort of shift gears here because I do have a concern, and you kind of touched on it a bit, Ethan. I think that was an interesting observation around, what is personalization? Is it sometimes kind of steering us in the wrong direction? And I do remember, talking with a retailer a couple of years ago that was very focused on trying to understand that shopper from the moment she was on the couch shopping for their shoes to the moment she walked into the store, and they wanted to make it really seamless and pick up where she left off. But they would notice often in a very different state of mind when she did actually show up, and she was maybe less practical than what she thought was looking, or the complete opposite. And now let's elevate that, because everything we're doing and we're talking about here is influenced by data science and AI, right? So back to my concern, and I'd like to hear, Satesh, how you're thinking about this, and we'll move through it. But my concern around AI is in any kind of predictive analytics, is it's sort of bringing us to a sea of sameness and cutting out the opportunity maybe for some creativity and some higher touch sort of, I won't say experiential, but at least some more surprising sort of opportunities. So how do you sort of see that playing out? Because we're already seeing with generative AI, a lot of campaigns are starting to look the same. A lot of the content is feeling very sort of typical. How do we place creativity into the data set or out of the data set to sort of make that personalization feel a little more, dare I say, magical?
Yeah, I think teams who are just looking at generative AI as this silver bullet and just applying it, and this sort of canonical thing that we hear from people that I have this prompt, I'll enter and I'll get, that's when you get the sameness, because the prompt can only be made in so many ways, and this system doesn't really understand you, your brand, your audience, and so on. So where we see a much better use of AI, machine learning, any of this tech is in the overall process of the creative. So the spaghetti that you spoke about, of tracking the journey, the same spaghetti happens inside the company. Many teams, many tools, many processes. So if you look at that and you say that, what are the steps in this? Where can I bring in tech? And machine learning today doesn't really have to be brought in, because AI, especially these new GPTs, have done a much better job of doing that. You don't really have to have data for each of these processes. So as an example, for one of our customers, because the comments, the feedback on the design and the design was happening in the same place, they were able to analyze all of the comments on our system and get feedback about what sort of comments are even flying around. They were able to eliminate an entire class of feedback because they realized 30% of the feedback is about logos. Let us just fix a few things in the design. So now that entire type of work of looking at a piece of content and reviewing and giving feedback and redoing is gone, because AI was used in the right way, right? So like that, there are many examples. So the thing that we are seeing is a better use of AI and machine learning is to take different parts of your process and improve those, because it's good at some of those sharper things, instead of just saying that this entire bowl of spaghetti, just go from there to giving me an answer. That we are really far from that today.
But we're still, one thing we know it's good at is sort of picking up the anomaly, right? Finding those outliers and seeing if they're worth pursuing or not. So do you see that playing into the creative process? And then Kartik, I want to sort of build on that with you in a second, but just quickly, Sataj, do you see how sort of this opportunity of tying in the outliers that the AI and the machine learning especially is good to pick up on?
That's a great point, Carl, because that's a great use of agentic AI, because you have some people keep saying that you have these autonomous bots who are running 24/7. What are they doing 24/7? Waiting for you to type a prompt? No, they can actually look at your data. They can look at stuff that is live. You can look at compliance issues. You can look at performance outliers. You can have it look at trends and figure out, is something dipping, something going to a better quadrant where you can maybe spend a little bit more on it. So notifying users so that they can press the big red button instead of taking the action themselves. But looking at trends across all of these things, they are very, very good at. So large amounts of creatives running across different campaigns across different channels for different audiences. Agents are really, really good at that. And again, that's a very well-defined, tiny problem, relatively speaking, that you are assigning it to. A lot of folks describe AI of today as having infinite interns. So no offense to interns, but if you have infinite interns just looking at every piece of content and every campaign, they can find stuff that you would not be able to find.
Amazing. I don't think interns are offended by that. Kartik, this idea of creativity, personalization. I often talk about sort of the predictive and prescriptive, nature of where we're going with all this. And God knows that when it comes to, we'll stick to food in your case. I've almost sometimes just wanted to magically appear, right? How are you seeing this play out? What is the future look of the creativity in your space? Is it a place where I'm sitting in traffic in Bogota and I get a knock on the window of the cab and there's my turbo meal waiting for me before I even knew I wanted it? Like, I'm being obviously a little facetious here, but how far can we go with this?
No, I mean, I think right now, I think everybody is still trying to figure out, what, Satej was saying. I think, how can we kind of do all the mundane stuff that no one wants to do, and then have more bandwidth to do the more creative stuff and take bigger bets, right? And then how can we move faster to market? So I'll give you two examples, right? I think one is I won't give you an avocado example again, but a sports example for you. The Dallas Mavericks had Luka Doncic, who's the amazing player we ever signed ever. And he was traded in the middle of the night, surprising LeBron, Luka, and everybody else. And he went to the LA Lakers, just to set the context up. So everyone was surprised. Now, what we had to do is make sure everybody moves as a marketing company, moving into creators and all really quickly. So the Lakers, for that example, what they did was the Hollywood sign the two L's, they made it the 77, which is like the Luca like number. So how can we get that out to market and all the platforms very quickly when you had like an event like that take place, right? I think that's where like AI can help, like multiple formats, multiple like iOS, CRM, everything else. What you can't do is like make a mistake in it. Like last week there was the musician who came up with a video on the Mavericks highlights, and they like blurred like Luca's face, and like that provoked a lot of reaction. So I think if you can get the mundane things done by AI a lot faster to scale, then you can spend a lot more time not making like creative mistakes. I think that's the most important part of it. The second part of it, like, ever since I've started my career, like Monday mornings has always been what happened last week, what happened in the weekend, what was like, the same store sales changes, how are we doing week on week, year on year, and things like that. That process we can shrink significantly because we'll know exactly like what happened, so we can focus a lot more on the decision making and how do we like pivot. I think those are for me like the two main like use cases for AI to kind of like move faster.
I forget who came out with the quote. I think some creative said, I wish AI could do my dishes and my laundry, not write my next book and draw my next picture, right? So I think that kind of sums up where we would like to see a lot of that productivity, and seeing some of the humanoid advancements we're making. We're maybe not so far off from that. Ethan, back to sort of, you said the prescriptive and the idea that we're trying to optimize and foresee, like, how far ahead do you feel like, we're trying to anticipate our customers? Are we looking too far ahead? Are we being realistic with those expectations around what we can get from the data? Or how far forward can we look, or how much still do we need to look in the rear view to get a full picture of what's happening on our stores, on our shop floors, basically?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a mix of all of the above. Like you want predictive data, you want to look back at what the data tells you that's been happening, but then you also need to apply some logic to it. I think even the example before, so you see a surge of visits somewhere because the context aligns around that. That doesn't mean that surge is going to continue forever. I think one of the great mistakes, if we look back on the last 20 years, was the idea of the retail apocalypse. Like, it ended up being absolute nonsense wrapped around a center of actual truth, which is e-commerce is growing and e-commerce is going to change retail forever. But that doesn't mean that if something is growing 100% because it's starting from so little, that it's going to continue doing that forever. And so I think we have this tendency to view data as the end-all be-all. It is not. It is an input. It is an incredibly significant input. It is one that needs to be considered both in terms of what we can do from a predictive perspective and what it tells us looking back and across. Like, what do we learn from other segments? But it still demands that we kind of give it that necessary context, that we utilize it properly. I think so much of what we're seeing is a massive uptick in tools that empower individuals to think more broadly and to think about more things at scale. But we still need to think. And I think that's a very exciting situation to be in, whether you're a creative, the way Satej was talking about, whether you're a decision maker at a retailer, whether you're in the restaurant business. You have lots of inputs that you can now grapple with all at once, but you're still the person that needs to be kind of in the driver's seat.
Yeah, absolutely. And have the knowledge and the experience to sort of treat whatever those prescriptions are. I have my friends here from a very famous Canadian brand called Beaver Tails. That calls it the Panda Principle, and the simple reason was they launched a new dessert and in Toronto at the Toronto Zoo, and they were excited when they saw their numbers triple that weekend. They said, "Wow, this really took off. This new flavor. Everybody must be really loving it." What they didn't realize is the zoo had just brought in pandas, and that tripled the traffic to the restaurant, and it had nothing to do with their new flavor. So they call it now the Panda Principles. They always kind of go and look at the data and try to see if there's other outliers out there that are maybe impacting results that are not something that they had on their radar. All right, let's wrap things up here. And things are moving very quickly. 2025 already feels like we've already had our fair share of disruption, but let's sort of help our attendees here sort of close it up and think about what's next, how to best prepare, where the leverage is right now around personalization, AI. What would be sort of the next logical steps you would encourage them to take? So we each kind of wrap things up here on a positive sort of forward-looking note, and I'll start with you, Satesh.
Yeah, so at least what we are seeing is that whether they adopt tech or not, whether they reduce cost or not, one thing that has happened is that everyone is shaken up. Top down, the tree is being shaken. People are seeing what will come out of it. So, and that's a good thing because people are, for the first time, maybe in a couple of decades, looking at their stack again. A lot of tech has come in, but especially when it comes to creative and working with analytics around the creative, that hasn't really changed for the longest time. So people are questioning the defaults. They are wondering if this is the right way to work. Obviously, it has big ramifications for the processes, people, unfortunately, that we are seeing. And, whether software vendors, agencies, everybody is going to feel the effects of it. So we have to be prepared for it. We know that teams are going to be questioning this stuff. I mentioned cost as being one of the things that is top of mind. Tech has come in. It will influence different parts of the process, but that's a great thing. A lot of people are open to changing. And yeah, those are the teams that are going to feel some effects, but they are going to win out in the long term.
Very insightful. Kartik?
I think 2025, like you said, is a period of like change with AI, cost, and a lot of like things that you need to like be nimble like about. I think the key thing I would look into is like, what's your unique competitive advantage as like a company? I think that's the most important thing. AI tools are great, but it's based on like past data, unfortunately, and like it doesn't have internal data. So for me, the key thing is like what's your internal data and like your unique competitive advantage. If you can develop better competitive insights in terms of what you need to do with your customer profiles, your operations in the business, and everything else, and leverage AI on top, it'll make you a lot more powerful, but still have the unique competitive advantage that you had, right? So I think that's the balance that's important to get right.
It's definitely part of my spiel as well. Lean into differentiation. It makes you more sustainable and relevant to your customers. Ethan.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the roundabout way to get there, but I'll start with the more controversial statement, which is most businesses should not have an AI strategy. Businesses should have strategies for improving customer experience, for improving the caliber of their marketing, for improving the way they process data. And the amazing thing about AI is AI will factor into so many of those processes and make them better. But ask what you are attempting to do first, and then how do we leverage AI within that pursuit? And we're going to end up in a much better situation. I think, the last 5 years, I mean, it's much longer, but the last 5 years almost feels like because of this acceleration, it's like kind of a graveyard of these amazing ideas that were going to change everything. And they changed very, very little because they never really served a critical use. And so I think it's so incumbent upon all businesses to ask, what are the things I actually need to change? I need to improve experience. I need to become more convenient. I need to understand my customer better. And then what role is AI going to play in allowing me to do that? I think if that's the approach we take, the AI revolution, evolution, whatever we want to call it, is going to have real staying power and a huge impact on the space over the next couple of years.
Yeah, wise words, and I think there's, I think already a feel like that right now, where we want to really just refocus on what makes us special in the first place, and let the technology then serve that purpose versus the other way around, as I believe we even opened this fascinating discussion with. So, thank you so much, Kartik, Ethan, Satej. It's been a real pleasure. I hope all the attendees got a lot out of this insight. I know I have this webinar, and I'm really looking forward to seeing your three companies continue sort of push forward in this space, because I think just from the feedback and the insights you've given on this webinar, we can expect great things. So thanks again for your time, and thanks Rethink Retail for the opportunity to share this with the audience.